What's up guys, and welcome to another awesome YouTube with me where we're going to be going over the hamstring curl. So this is part of kind of like my meat and potatoes series, going over the big exercises that most of you will be including within your training plans. Before I take a deep dive into hamstring curls, just a quick reminder that Elite Bikini Body is out now. That's my training plan where I update your training every single month. You've got 6 days a week of training. You can choose the workouts that you want to out of that. It's to make sure that you are on track throughout this festive season, making sure that you're doing the right exercises to keep progressing. So I update those every single month. You get everything you need to be making sure that you get the best results possible from the time and effort that you're putting into the gym. Okay, so there's enough of my quick plug. Let's take a dive into hamstring curls. So first of all, we're going to go over basic technique. Now, obviously your hamstring curl machines will vary. This one here is actually quite nice. It puts you in a nice position just because it hikes up your hip. The reason we might do this and kind of get you into a little bit more hip flexion is because it allows you to, or it limits you from going into too much extension. So by locking you into a little bit of hip flexion, it kind of limits that kind of overextension of that lumbar that we get, especially at the top of a hamstring curl. If you don't have a machine like this that naturally kind of hikes you up, what you can do, or what I have done sometimes with a lying hamstring curl, is to use a soft foam roller across your hips. So imagine that bench is completely flat, soft foam roller there, and it just creates that little bit of hip flexion. You might also be able to create a little bit of hip flexion just by like rolling up a hoodie or a sweatshirt or something if you're wearing one. For some of you it won't work, it might not be enough. You could also use like a bar pad, like a squat bar pad, just to hike you up a little bit. Again, some of you it might not work. Alternatively, the flat hamstring curl is very, very effective, and I do tend to program that a lot, but if I'm training someone in person, I tend to like a little bit of hip flexion going on. So with this one here, we've got that little bit of hip flexion because of the design of the machine. We've got our elbows down here. Really brace yourself into that bench, keeping your core contracted. So all we're gonna do there is drive your heels up to your butt, full range of motion as high as you possibly can, big squeeze at the top. And then we want that full range of motion all the way down as far as we can to get that full stretch of your hamstrings. Now, by having your hips in a little bit more flexion, it also allows us to get a little bit more of a stretch at the bottom. So our hamstrings are working a little bit more in that lengthen range just by flexing our hips a little bit. It doesn't quite work your hamstrings at that full length as much as a seated hamstring curl. Because we're at a gym that actually doesn't have a seated hamstring curl, we're not going to be going over that seated variation today. But just really quickly, because we're in a seated position there, our hips are more flexed. So imagine that seated hamstring curl where we're driving our heels into our butt, hips are more flexed. We get a little bit more hamstring loading at that lengthen range at the top there, because obviously hamstrings are crossing both the knee and the hip. So the angle at the hip obviously influences the length at which we contract our hamstrings. When we're on a laying hamstring curl, you could argue it's a little bit more better at that shorten range at the top. So with this laying version, especially with this flexed kind of hip position with that angle there, we get a little bit of loading at the bottom, which is quite nice, but arguably we're working hardest from here to here. Obviously the design of your machine varies, and like the cam on the machine. So depending on how these cams are kind of designed, then it will load you in slightly different ways. Some machines work with the strength curve of your hamstrings, some don't, or with knee flexion, they work through that strength curve and optimally kind of align with that strength curve, that resistance profile, but not all machines obviously will do that. But just keep things simple, guys. Laying hamstring curl, really, really great option to isolate your hamstrings through knee flexion. So if you remember, our last video of this series was about seated cable rows. Now, there are obviously plenty of ways you could do seated cable rows. Unlike this exercise where, look, we're fixed in a machine, there's not really many ways you can do it. But I'm gonna show you two different ways you could use this machine. Now, obviously, we've got the simple variation when everything's nice in line, our toes are pointing straight forwards. You can also do this with toes slightly pointing out or inwards. Now, because of obviously the kind of the structure of our hamstrings and the fact they do cross two joints, by changing the angle of our toes, we can somewhat influence the area of our hamstrings that we're actually trying to target. So hamstrings, 3 muscles. If we turn our toes very slightly outwards, we can get a little bit more into those outer hamstrings. If we turn them slightly inwards, we can get a little bit more onto kind of those inner hamstrings and maybe into those adductors a little bit as well. When it comes to turning your toes in though, it's not the most comfortable. The alignment doesn't feel great for everyone. I tend to not program it. I can't remember the last time I programmed toes in. Toes out, I do quite like. I program it sometimes, especially if you want to kind of get the outer sweep of those outside hamstrings. So toes out. All we're going to do, same position here. And we're just going to fix our toes in a very slightly outward position. So we drive in, toes stay very slightly outwards, full range of motion, all the way down to the bottom. Obviously, we're dictated just by natural mobility as to how far our toes can stay out. But if we're looking to slightly vary the stimulus of the hamstring curl, then toes out is a great option to work those outer hamstrings. Another way you could use this is single leg. So if you have some left-right asymmetries, if you've got one hamstring a little bit bigger than the other or a little bit stronger than the other, single leg's a great option. It's also great if you have a hard time connecting with your hamstrings. So single leg, working one leg at a time, allows you to connect with each hamstring individually. I say each hamstring, there's 3 hamstring muscles, okay? But one leg individually. So same setup position, we'd have just one leg laying there hanging, and we work one leg. We're just in straight alignment here with those toes. We could obviously slightly out turn if we want to on that single leg, but I quite like just straight working one leg at a time. Okay, and then we can obviously work our other legs. We can also use like a 2-1 method with this. So we can go up with 2 legs and down with 1. The reason we'll do that, it's called a 2-1 accentuated eccentric method. So we're accentuating the eccentric, we're overloading the eccentric. So if we're here, we're able to lift a little bit more weight going up with 2 legs, and then we take it off, and then we control down with 1. So obviously that one leg is working harder on the way down. Because the eccentric muscle contraction, about 20 to 40% more force, it can handle a little bit more weight. So that's why we kind of use that variation to kind of overload that eccentric on one leg to really kind of max out on that activation on the eccentric, really fire up those fast twitch fibers. Whereas what you'd actually find is if we were using a similar weight, we might not be able to lift with that one leg, but by lifting up with 2, we can still lower with 1. And that's how we get the benefit of the 2-1 accentuated eccentric technique. So in just a second, I'm going to be showing you one of my favorite intensity techniques to use with hamstring curls, which I call the Meadows extended set, inspired by the late great John Meadows technique on his extended sets. He was renowned for his extended sets with hamstring curls, absolutely horrible. I will share that with you in just a second. But before, I just want to cover why and when you might use hamstring curls. So if you know me and you know anything about my programming, then you'll know I quite like to put hamstring curls more towards the start of a workout than towards the end. The reason I quite like them at the start is because A, it helps warm up your hamstrings, get a lot of blood flow in there. So if we do them, say before squat type variations, our knees tend to feel a little bit better. Nobody knows why. There's no kind of physiological, biomechanical reason why your knees necessarily feel better, possibly just due to that blood flow and just sending a lot of kind of blood to that area that's kind of lacking it at the start of your workout. Just doing more before you're doing your squats might work because of that. No one really knows. It just works. Second reason is because most people tend to have weaker hamstrings relative to their quadriceps. Now, there's an optimal hamstrings quadriceps ratio. If your quadriceps are too strong relative to your hamstrings, then you are exposing yourself to more hamstring strains, you are exposing yourself to more knee issues. So by placing your hamstring curls more towards the start, you're making them a priority and improving their strength. Another reason is because typically, now I train a lot of bikini athletes and people that want to look great in their bikini on the beach, and it is always posterior chain, it's always glutes and hamstrings that are a priority over building quads. So placing your hamstrings and obviously glutes more towards the start of your workouts obviously just benefit that in terms of building up the right proportions, okay? So that's why I would use hamstring curls and when you would use hamstring curls. Obviously, they're no replacement for like Romanian deadlift type variations because these are an isolation exercise at the end of the day. But if you want to isolate and target your hamstrings, really there's no better than a hamstring curl machine. So as promised, this is the Meadows extended set. So this is the intensity technique I wanted to share with you. This is the one you've hung around for because it's horrible. And if you know me, you know I like some horrible finishes. Now, a Meadows extended set is simply like it's a drop set on steroids, basically. So what we're gonna do is start out with a weight that we want to use for, say, 10 reps, okay? The reps don't really matter too much here. You can do this starting at 8 reps, 9 reps, 10 reps, 30 reps if you want to, okay? But let's just say, for the sake of argument, we want 10 reps. So start with a weight that allows you to do 10 reps, comfortable-ish, maybe 2 or 3 reps in reserve, okay? So you're not going to complete failure, but you're keeping form tight and you're going close-ish to failure, right? So it's comfortable-ish. Once we've done our 10 reps, immediately you drop the weight down. So we keep going. So imagine you've done your 10 reps, we drop the weight down, we keep on going. Now, there's no real number I would place on things after that. So we've done our 10 reps, we might get another 9, 10, 30, whatever you're going for. Immediately, once we've done that, we go down again. So we're going to failure now, okay? All the way to failure. Now we can go beyond failure. We can even just do 1 or 2 reps as partials before we drop that weight. Now imagine we've dropped that 3 or 4 times. There's no real rules on this one, okay? We've dropped that 3 or 4 times. We do as many reps as we can to finish. Now you can probably see that this weight's too light for me. I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. We go to failure on that final weight, which will feel really light, but also really heavy at the same time. Once we finish as many reps as we can, then we're just gonna do partial reps. Now we're trying to get about halfway up on these. Now, because this weight's so light for me, I'm actually struggling because it is so light, just to kind of control the motion, because otherwise it's just gonna go here, okay? But we're filming at the end of the day, all right? So you're continuing with your partial reps, and then your partial reps just get shorter, and then your partial reps get shorter, and then that is the end of your set, okay? So that is a Meadows extended set. So we've gone maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 times. We've dropped the weight down gradually. If you're on a machine that is plate loaded, maybe the partner's taken off those plates. We've gone 3, 4 times, 5 times maybe even. No rules to this one. And then we're extending that set by going into partial reps, as many as we possibly can to finish, all right? Now, I'm pretty tired just talking about it, and I'm only using a lightweight here as well. But that is the idea. It's absolutely horrible. Meadows extended set. Give that a go if you want something a little bit sadistic in your next training session. All right, guys, now that's a wrap on our hamstring curls video. Drop in the comments below if you want to see videos about certain exercises. As I said, this is kind of part of that meat and potatoes exercise series where we're just going to be taking one exercise, showing you how to perform it, showing you different variations and takes on that exercise, and taking a little bit more of a deep dive into the exercise, but also not boring you, not spending like 30, 40, 50 minutes going over like the mechanics specifically of how to do it. Keeping it nice and simple and just telling you exactly what you need to get great results from the exercise, and also some spicy ideas that you can use as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed that video. As always, make sure you like the video to support my channel and subscribe. And just a quick plug about Elite Bikini Body. It's Elite Bikini Body Program. You don't have to be a bikini athlete. It's for anyone that wants to look great in a bikini or in their clothes or looking great naked or in the mirror. So it's to build those hourglass shapes. It's training written specifically by me, updated every single month. It will keep you on track over this period and make sure you're getting great results from your training. The training plans are all inspired by my results with my elite bikini athletes, and it's your opportunity to join in that program too and get great results from it for a very, very, very low cost. Even better than that, the first week is completely free, so you can try it. You don't have to continue with it. Super easy to cancel. I'll put all the links below for anything that I've mentioned in this video. So remember, like, subscribe, check those links below, and we'll see you soon.